Shavua Tov Rabotai, we are continuing with our Mishna Yomi, Masechet Beitzah. We are up to Perek Aleph, Mishnah Daled. Today's Mishnayot should be Leilu Nishmat, Neria ben Svetlana Aranbaev, and Eliyahu ben Burchai Israelov, Menuchatam Began Eden, Amen, and Leavdi ben Chaim L'Chaim, for the Refuah Shlema, Bacha bat Esther, and Daniel Shalom ben Rosa, Betoch Shah Chulei Israel. The previous Mishnah taught that a person may not take doves from a dovecot on Yom Tov unless he had removed their muktzah status before Yom Tov. The following Mishnah deals with one who prepared certain doves before Yom Tov, but upon coming to take them on Yom Tov cannot tell whether the doves he finds at that time are the ones he had prepared. The Mishnah begins, Zimen shechorim umatzah levanim. If one prepared black doves in a particular compartment in a dovecot before Yom Tov, but on Yom Tov found only white ones in that compartment, levanim umatzah shechorim, or if he prepared white doves in a particular compartment, but on Yom Tov found only black ones there, shnaim umatzah shlosha, or if he prepared the only two doves that were in a particular compartment, but on Yom Tov found three over there. Now one of the doves was certainly not prepared, but he cannot tell which one it is. Asurim, in each of these cases, the doves he found are prohibited because they might not be the ones he had prepared. In the first two cases, where he prepared black doves and found white ones, and vice versa, the doves that he found are certainly not the ones he had prepared. Now the Gemara states that this is too obvious for the Mishnah to bother mentioning. Therefore, the Mishnah must mean something else. In fact, the first two cases are one. Before Yom Tov, the person prepared black doves and white doves. The black ones were in one compartment and the white ones were in another. On Yom Tov, he found white doves in the compartment where he had prepared the black ones, and black doves in the compartment where he had prepared the white ones. There are two ways to explain this change. Either the black ones and the white ones had simply switched compartments, or all the prepared doves had left both of the compartments, and other doves which had not been prepared had taken their places. If the prepared doves had just switched compartments, they would all be permitted. But if the doves he found were from elsewhere, they would all be forbidden. So the Rav says the Mishnah rules that they are all forbidden because the second possibility, the prepared doves left and were replaced by unprepared ones, is more likely than the first, that they prepared doves switched compartments. Now in the Mishnah's third case, where he prepared two doves and found three, the problem is that one of the doves is certainly forbidden. He cannot tell which one it is. Therefore, each one of them is prohibited because it might be the forbidden one. In truth, there are situations where we say that if a single prohibited item is mixed with two or more permitted ones, the single item loses its separate identity and becomes permitted like the other ones. However, we do not apply this ruling to live beings such as doves because each one is too significant to lose its separate identity. The Mishnah continues, Shlosha u'matzah shnayim mutarim. However, if he prepared three and on Yom Tov found only two, they are permitted because they are presumably two of the doves he had prepared. The Rav says we assume that one left and the other two remain. The Mishnah continues with similar cases. Betoch haken u'matzah lifnei haken. If he prepared doves that were inside one of the compartments, but on Yom Tov found doves only on a ledge in front of that compartment and none inside it, asurim. They are prohibited because they might not be the ones he had prepared. So again, he prepared doves that were inside one of the compartments, and then on Yom Tov found doves only on the ledge in front of the compartment, asurim. And the commentaries explain either the prepared doves had stepped out to the ledge in front of the compartment, or they had left the compartment altogether and other unprepared doves are now on the ledge. The Meiri explains the second possibility is more likely and therefore the found doves are forbidden. V'im en sham elehem. However, if there were no doves in the entire dovecot before Yom Tov, except the ones he had prepared, and in Yom Tov he found doves only in front of the compartment and none inside it, Hare'elu mutarim, they are permitted because they are presumably the ones he had prepared. Now, since there were no other doves in the dovecot, we may assume that these are the ones he had prepared and that they had come out to rest on the ledge. Now, the Mishnah refers to doves that cannot fly, rather they hop from one place to another. In the case of doves that can fly, if the doves he finds are not in the place where he prepared them, they are always prohibited because of the strong possibility that there are other unprepared doves that flew into the dovecot from elsewhere. And this is how the Gemara explains it on page 11a in Masechet Beitzah. And that is in Mishnah Dal. Mishnah Hey now cites four more disputes between Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel that concern Yom Tov. The first regards a vendor's booth. a vendor would set up a portable booth in the marketplace, remove the door, and prop up the door as a shelf to display his wares. When he was finished for the day, he would put the door back in place to keep the booth closed when he was not using it. This is brought down in the Arts Elucidated diagram in the introduction to Mishnah 5. The Mishnah begins, Bet Shammai Amrim, Bet Shammai say, En misalekin et terisin biyom tov, a vendor may not detach the door from his booth on Yom Tov, because that resembles the melacha of demolishing. According to Bet Shammai, detaching the door from the booth is rabbinically forbidden because it resembles the melacha of demolishing. Putting the door back in place is also rabbinically forbidden because it resembles the melacha of building. Now, it's not actual building because the booth is not attached to the ground, and also the doors of these booths are not held in place by a pivot, but by a type of peg that does not allow them to be opened except by removing the door. Therefore, inserting this peg is not actual building. But Bet Hillel permit not only to detach the door so that he could sell items that will add to the joy of Yom Tov, but also to put it back in place after he has finished selling for the day. If he is not allowed to put the door back, he might not want to detach it in the first place because he will then have to leave his booth open the entire day. Therefore, to encourage him to open his booth and sell goods that will increase the joy of Yom Tov, the sages allowed him not only to detach the door in the first place, but even to put it back. And the commentaries explain that it's permitted to buy and sell food items on Yom Tov subject to certain conditions brought down in the Mishnah chapter 3, Mishnah 6 through 8. The second dispute, the Mishnah continues, Bet Shammai Omrim, Bet Shammai say, En notlin et ha'eli lekatsev alav basar. A person may not take a large pestle, which resembles a thick, heavy board, to chop meat on it because it is muktzah. Now, this is not an ordinary pestle, such as one that's used to crush powder in a mortar, but a large beam that is used to crush grain, the Rav explains. Bet Shammai ruled that it may not be used as a chopping board for meat because it is muktzah. Since this type of beam is expensive, the owner does not allow it to be used for anything besides its regular use for fear that it will be ruined and he will lose a valuable item. Therefore, it is muktzah under the category of muktzah machmat chesron kis, muktzah because of a concern for a monetary loss, as the Gemara discusses in Masechet Shabbat, page 123a. Ubet Hillel matirin, but Bet Hillel permit a person to take such a pestle so that he can use it to prepare food that will be eaten on Yom Tov. According to Beit Hillel, the muktzah prohibition was lifted in this case for the sake of Yom Tov enjoyment. The Mishnah moves now to the third dispute. Bet Shammai Amrim, Bet Shammai say, En notnin et ha'or lifnei dorsan. After a person slaughters an animal on Yom Tov, he may not put the hide in front of people who will trample on it, which prevents it from decaying, because that is linked to the melacha of tanning. Trampling hides is the first step in the process of tanning, making hides into leather. Bet Shammai therefore prohibit a person to put a hide in a place where it will be trampled, because it looks as if he's about to tan the hide on Yom Tov, which is a prohibited melacha. And because the hide is muktzah, Bet Shammai say he may not even pick it up unless it has an olive's volume of meat attached to it. A fresh hide, which is still moist, cannot be used for anything. It is therefore muktzah and may not be moved on Yom Tov or Shabbat, as Shulchan Aruch writes in Orach Chaim, chapter 308, halakha 25. However, if an olive's volume of meat is still attached to the hide, it is not muktzah on Yom Tov, because the meat may be cooked and eaten, as the Mishnah Berurah explains in chapter 499, Sivkat and 6. Now, the presence of some meat on the hide removes only the prohibition of muktzah. Even such a hide may not be put in a place where it will be trampled, because trampling is part of the tanning process. Bet Hillel matirin, but Bet Hillel permit both activities, because if a person is not allowed to prevent the animal's hide from decaying, he will not want to slaughter the animal in the first place, and then there will be less meat to eat on Yom Tov. And the fourth dispute, the Mishnah continues, Bet Shammai Amrim, Bet Shammai say, En motzin lo et hakatan vo et halulav velo et sefer Torah lereshut harabim. We may not carry a child, a lulav, or a Torah scroll out into a public domain on Yom Tov, because this violates the biblical melacha of transferring, which is prohibited on Yom Tov for purposes other than preparing food. The Torah prohibits on Yom Tov all the 39 melachot that may not be done on Shabbat, listed in Shabbat chapter 7, Mishnah 2, except when one needs to do a melacha for the sake of food preparation. Therefore, for example, although carrying things in the street is a melacha, a person is permitted on Yom Tov to carry food and items needed to prepare food. Bet Shammai rules that it is prohibited to carry anything else, such as the items listed in the Mishnah. Bet Hillel matirin, but Bet Hillel permit carrying these items in the street because they maintain that any melacha permitted for the sake of preparing food is permitted for other purposes as well. This rule is known as mitoch shutra letzorech hutrana mishol letzorech. Since this melacha was permitted in Yom Tov for food-related needs, it was permitted on non-food Yom Tov needs. It was permitted for non-food Yom Tov needs as well. Therefore, since one is allowed to transfer objects that are needed for food preparation, one may also transfer these other items. And that is on Abotai of today's Mishna Yomi. Everybody should have a Shavua Tov. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen v'amen.